everybody, a very warm welcome to today's event. So good morning, good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are in the world.
Good morning.
Hello.
Hello.
Now, we want this to be an engaging session and it's going to be a large one. So I could encourage you to use the chat from the outset and introduce yourselves so we can see who we've got on the call. So name, your job title, company, and where you are in the world, because this is a global audience. And so we love to see who is here and where you're calling from. So please utilize the chat and utilize the chat throughout the session as well. So if a question comes to mind, as Lisa and I are discussing, Lisa's our guest speaker for today, and I will introduce her shortly. Then please pop it in the chat and we will come back to it during Q&A. So warm welcome if you're just joining us to today's WeQual Think Tank on the future of the workforce. Please introduce yourself in the chat. We love to see where everyone is joining from, the types of companies and who you are. So please use the chat and we'll be using the chat throughout the session. So if you don't know me, my name is Emma Hicks and I'm VP of Global Membership and Programs at WeQual, and I am super thrilled to welcome you all to today's Think Tank. It's our first session of autumn and we are looking at the future of the workforce. So while you get settled, please use the chat. You can keep your camera on. It'd be lovely to see all of your faces. It'll just be Lisa, our guest speaker, and I who are spotlighted until we get to the Q&A. So just a bit of context if you're new to WeQual. So every quarter, we actually open up the WeQual program, which is for our members to the global business community. Now, again, a bit of WeQual. So our mission at WeQual is to drive equality within the world's largest companies. And we do that by spotlighting and giving a platform to talented business women from across the world through the WeQual Awards. And we also offer two programs. So one for executives, C-suite, C-suite -1, -2, and more recently, our Rising Leaders program for managers. And my colleague Karen, and there are so many people on this call, but Karen's just going to give a wave and she will introduce herself in the chat. Karen is happy to stay on after the session and take any questions that you might have. And yeah, we'd love to have you stay on if you've got any questions. Okay, so I am going to introduce our guest speaker for today. So Lisa, if you give us a wave, you should be spotlighted. Lisa, are you ready?
Ready as I'll ever be, I guess.
So everyone, I'm delighted to introduce Lisa Vincent, who is Chief Transformation Officer at Prologis. Lisa leads large-scale transformation at the world's largest industrial real estate company, and she is an influential force in shaping the future of global business. Now, Lisa brings a wealth of experience in integrating technology, innovation and strategic change, and we are so excited to hear her thoughts on how organisations can prepare for the workforce of tomorrow. And Lisa is actually one of our very first women to reach the finals of the WeQual Awards back in 2019 in the business turnaround category. And she's also a lifetime member of the WeQual executives. So please join me in welcoming Lisa. If you don't know me, my name's Emma Hicks. Yeah, we'll dive right in, Lisa.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Emma.
So to kick us off, could you just tell us a little bit more about your background and your current role?
Yeah, absolutely. I always make the joke to people, if you look at me on paper, I don't make a lot of sense. I'm not straight up a ladder. I'm a little all over the place. So my background started in the United States Navy, actually. I spent 10 years in the military, and I specialized in nuclear power operations. So I was stationed both on an aircraft carrier for about 5 years, and then I also taught for the Naval Nuclear Power Training Command for about 4 or 5 years before I got out. I pursued my MBA. I went to the Citadel Military College, and I've worked in multiple industries over the last, 14, 15 years now since leaving the Navy. Diamonds and gemstones, if you've ever heard of the 4 C's of a diamond, I worked for that grading laboratory. I've also worked in healthcare, a couple of different healthcare systems, one of the largest nonprofits in the United States, actually. And then most recently, I came to Prologis. So I joined here in early 2020, about a month before the pandemic hit. So very fun, joining a company, starting up a new sector of the business and bringing a team online virtually for the first time in my entire career. So that's just a little bit about my background and how I've kind of hopped industries, but really specializing in helping businesses transform and meet whatever their strategic goals are.
Wow. Gosh, yeah, the breadth of industries that you've worked for is incredible. So yeah, I can't wait for you to bring all of that rich experience into this discussion today. So this is a huge topic, right? Future of the workforce. So let's kind of try and explore the latest trends and challenges that are shaping the future of the workforce. But we're going to kind of hone in on automation and AI. And do you have any practical tips to help companies prepare for and navigate this journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there are a few categories that I'd really bucket it in, but I would start with being strategic. And what I mean by that is working backwards from what you're really trying to accomplish as an organization. One of the things that I'm seeing a lot of is, AI and machine learning is like this big, new, shiny, fancy object. And everybody has tons of ideas and wants to run in 1,000 different directions with it. Well, very quickly, you can start to waste both human capital, the capital of technology. So if you don't really understand what you're trying to strategically accomplish as a company, to then go, how can AI bolster what we're trying to do, or at Prologis, right, keep us ahead of what's next, then it's very easy to get distracted and start wasting resources. I think you have to be super, super open and honest with your communication with your employees and everybody in your organization. To pretend that this shift in our workforce isn't going to change how we work is a little bit naive, and to not have that open, transparent conversation with people about what that looks like is really doing people a disservice. You have to think about investing in retraining your employees, right? They have to learn how to do their job differently. This is about technology being a job enhancer, not a job replacement. And so making sure that you're providing mechanisms for all types of learning styles in your company is really, really, really critical. Adopt agile practices. Be comfortable with minimal viable products, right? Where you run a sprint cycle, you test quickly, you learn, you fail, you move on. If you wait for perfection, right, it is going to get in the way of progress because this technology is changing so, so rapidly. And then last but not least, you have to build a data-driven culture. We live in a world, especially when you think about generational differences, where data can start to make people feel uncomfortable. It brings up privacy concerns. It can bring up a big brothery type of concept. But if you really help your people understand the power of data and how it can drive AI machine learning and help them be more effective, then it's about what's in it for them versus them having to be scared of this really data-driven cultural concept.
I love that. And let's stick on the theme then of skills. So you've talked about retraining and upskilling. So we know how important it is, but what are the sort of approaches that you're using at Prologis to kind of support this shift in skills development?
I mean, the big thing that we've started with is micro learning and peer-to-peer learning. So as an example, back in May, we brought about 130 senior leaders from around the world in our company together to talk about strategy and leadership and culture and where we're taking our organization in the future. And during that time, we used case studies with our chief technology officer, right? And people in this huge ballroom learning how to use ChatGPT to solve a business case study. And what it did is it just made it accessible and approachable to people. And very quickly, you're walking around the ballroom and you're hearing senior leaders have conversations with each other, go, wow, this is cool. Did you see how fast it gave me this information? Did you know it could look this up this way? And very quickly, in a peer-to-peer setting with leadership, we created this momentum that we brought back to the rest of the company. And just in the last couple of months, we've brought online our sort of second version of our enclosed OpenAI for Prologis. And over half of our workforce is in there we're doing more than 8,000 interactions on average a month in a company that has 2,700 employees. We cover 1.2 billion square feet of real estate across the world with a somewhat small workforce when you really think about it. But that micro learning, and starting with our chief technology officer at the top, we're lucky also. He's a little bit of a stand-up comedian that I absolutely love to work with him. So he makes it accessible and approachable. Yeah. So he's also, with his team, created bite-sized videos, which we are releasing every few weeks, through global communications. And we're writing GPTs for people to make their jobs easier. And what we find is once somebody gets in there and just tries it and uses it for the first time, they are way more likely to keep coming back to it, and they exponentially get better at it because they start to see how it helps them with their job. So I really think focus on different learning styles, make it bite-sized learning, and do the peer-to-peer learning at all levels of leadership in the organization, because that's where you really start to get some cool traction.
Gosh, absolutely. That sounds incredible. And I love the fact that you've had sort of senior leadership leading the charge in that regard, creating a safe space for everyone to kind of learn together, and then how that then cascades to the rest of the organization, making learning accessible, fun, and less scary. So that is brilliant. So on the flip side, in terms of challenges, so what are the challenges that you have faced in implementing digital transformation at Prologis, and how have you successfully overcome them?
So I think the first challenge goes a little bit to my first answer, which is tackling too much too fast. So being very thoughtful about intent and what you're really trying to accomplish, so that you put the right resources working on the right things that make the most business impact. And for us, we kind of bucket it in two segments, right? Supporting our decision making, and then operational efficiency or productivity gains. It's very easy to go down the path of efficiency and productivity, but you have to ask yourself, what is the return on that investment? Do I need to be solving for pain points with my employees, right? Do I have a morale or an employee engagement opportunity? Or do I need to be bolstering the decisions of my big time deal makers that are going to generate, right, tons of more revenue as a result of that decision support that you're getting? But all that comes down to change management. We are very, very focused on comprehensive strategic change management here, so much so that we have an in-house organizational change management team with a proprietary change management model that we designed a couple of years ago and run very specific to the Prologis business. And we work so hard to get in early. You can't start doing change management a month before you're going to try something new. Sometimes you need to be thinking 6 to 9 months in advance and putting yourselves in the shoes of the people that are going to be impacted by this change, and leading with a sense of empathy and compassion, and really what is in it for them? Why is this important? How does this help them? Making it about everybody, not just a company solution, is incredibly important, because it gets the entire workforce and all the employee base engaged and excited about it. So, that the strategic piece and the change management piece are some of the biggest challenges that I think everybody's up against, that we have to be really, really thoughtful about and check ourselves on.
Yeah. So having a framework that you've, wherever possible, defined in advance, that is kind of multifaceted. So looking at it from lots of different angles, including the human, that human-centric approach. How is it going to be? How are people going to feel? How are they going to be potentially affected? And how that then might translate as leaders, in terms of our approach. So you talk about empathy. So I absolutely love that. So let's take it outside of Prologis, or not outside of Prologis, but looking at the kind of competition. So can you also share some examples of how Prologis has used the digital transformations that you've used as examples to stay competitive in what is continually, that rapidly changing business environment?
Yeah. So as an example, you think about decision support, right? And bolstering the decisions that we're making. We're using AI to extract data from multiple areas across the company that also help us understand strategic operations of our customers and their needs, where they need distribution centers located, how they fit within the global supply chain, and how we fit within the global supply chain. And we're using all of these individual data points to go, we should buy land here. We should build there. We should do this for this community. We should understand these labor requirements. I mean, by the end of next year, we are going to have educated 25,000 people in the skills that they need to work for our customers in our warehouses. So we're just extracting data from everywhere under the sun to help us make decisions on those types of deals. When you think about the integral global supply chain, as an example, we're using technology to, instead of having an architect spend hours or days laying out possible options for a building on a piece of land, we're using an AI platform now that does it for minutes for our investment officers and our development teams. And they can get 95% of the way on exactly how to optimize land usage without ever talking to a professional architect. So like those are the time, and that's not just an operational efficiency gain, right? For our employees, that's also supporting the decision aspect where we maximize, our land usage, for example.
Wow. Okay, I'm going to move on to diversity, equity, and inclusion. How does Prologis prioritize D&I in your digital transformation efforts, and what impact has it had on creating a future-ready workforce?
So one of the things that we've done is added a B to DEI at Prologis, and that B stands for belonging. So as we think about our core real estate platform, we've had the opportunity to start leveraging our platform to support sustainability, climate control. We're now the number 2 US or number 2 solar energy provider in the United States, because we are leveraging our core platform to do all of these very cool things. But what that means is that we are bringing in super brilliant and amazing people from outside of Prologis and outside of the core real estate industry as well. I'm one of those people. I have no real estate industry experience before I joined Prologis. So we do a ton of efforts around the belonging piece too, to make people feel like they are part of what we call One Prologis. And that is something that we've really started this year in 2024. We have made specific efforts in sponsorship for women and people of color across our organization to help move them into officer positions or move them into promotion opportunities in other areas of the organization that are really tied to succession planning and future growth of our workforce. We are working on all of this training. We're leveraging LinkedIn Learning. We are sending out surveys and trying to understand what matters to our workforce, especially when you start to consider differences in generations and what's important to them. I personally, I have 2 people on my team in their 20s, and I'm learning how to lead them, and that, like, I'm taking them to lunch and I'm like, help me learn how you see the world. Like, how could I be a better leader for you? So we're doing all of those types of things across our organization under that DEIB umbrella. We're even making sure that the vendors that support Prologis or support our customers are women and minority-owned businesses. We've done tons of work around optimizing our vendor base to ensure that we're also supporting that externally from a community impact perspective. We go so far as to one day of the year, we shut down our offices for the entire day across the world for Impact Day so that we can go give back to the community. And we do all of these things under the umbrella of what we're trying to do to make the world a better place for all people.
Wow, amazing. Right, I'm just going to do a little time check. So we are good. We are good. Your passion and enthusiasm is, we're nailing
I get
this.
excited.
Lisa.
I'm sorry.
And it is so clear. It literally comes through the screen. But I just want to address our wonderful audience. So we're going to be heading to Q&A very soon. I just want to remind you that the chat is open. So if you do have any questions, do pop them in, and we will work through them as we get to Q&A. But we love to have people come on camera and ask questions directly. So if you're happy to do that, just raise your hand. We will spotlight you, introduce yourself, and ask your question to Lisa directly. So it's wonderful to hear from our audience, members, non-members, new to WeQual, and to get that peer sharing going, as you've talked about the importance of peer learning. or different peer levels, because this is an open session. So yes, please come forward and pop those in the chat or raise your hand. So final question, Lisa, for now. What do you think are the biggest risks of digital transformation, and how can leaders manage them effectively to ensure resilience?
I think one of the biggest risks is actually the engagement of the workforce. So, as I mentioned, when we have a very engaged and excited workforce, they have tons of ideas and they're highly innovative. And if we are not very thoughtful in how we hear those ideas, we solicit additional input, we hear diverse perspectives, and make sure that our teams understand why or why not we are pursuing that idea is extremely critical, because there are going to be a lot of ideas we just don't have the money or the capacity or the resources to do right now. And what you don't want is to shut down your workforce and stop that pipeline of innovative ideas. So making sure that you have really thoughtful, deep conversations with an employee about their idea and why it's not being pursued right now, and helping them connect the dot from a business perspective and really learn that kind of mindset. We are missing an opportunity to grow and educate our workforce, and we are also at huge risk for shutting them down and stifling their ideas. So I think taking the time to really have those meaningful conversations is super important. Yeah,
I completely agree. So that brings us to the end of formal questions. I do have so many more and I could continue this conversation all day. But yeah, I really want to give an opportunity to our audience, and it's a big group. So please come forward either by the chat and I'll read them out, or please raise your hand and ask Lisa a question. And if not, I'll keep asking questions. So please come forward. Christine. We're going to try and spotlight you, Christine, if you're happy for us to. So just introduce yourself and your company. That would be fantastic. Thank you for going first.
Thank you. Christine Goldschneider. I work with Sanofi. It's a pharmaceutical company. And we're on a similar journey for sure. It's very fast-paced and accelerating, and we have lots of training going on. But I'm wondering, I'm kind of thinking future forward, how we're going to take, I'd say, the people who've probably been around a little longer, ingrained processes, ingrained ways of working that's just so mentally core to how we've operated. How do you take those people through that transformation? You mentioned the change management process. Very difficult, right? Because it's working, why break it? Knowing that new people coming in, younger people coming in, will look at something like our current process and say, why are you doing it like this? This is crazy. But that's how it's always worked. So I'm kind of wondering how you've gone about that.
I spend a lot of time in some pretty in-depth one-on-one conversations with people like you're describing, that might be slower adopters, or why fix it if it's not broken, to your point. And what I find is, in a group setting, getting people to open up is much, much harder, because often that behavior is not driven by a lack of desire to change or just a lack of interest or anything. It's typically driven by some other root cause that is causing that behavior. So, I work a lot, I work a lot in the world of like business turnaround, fixed processes, even ones that aren't broken, we can still make them better, right? And when you take the time to just one-on-one, I almost call it like a therapy conversation. There's a little running joke, I'm like the company therapist. But I really try to sit down and understand what is driving that behavior. And it's through a super honest and open conversation, I eventually get to what is actually going on. And more often than not, it's driven by fear and insecurity. And once you realize that and help that person understand that the emotion they're feeling is completely normal and what everybody else is feeling too, and then offer that safe space with them to go, I'll show you a couple of things, like just I'll help you. Nobody ever needs to know. And then they have that one tiny win, and then you get them going. And when you can turn that resistor, they will bring the rest of your resistors along often. So I really think it comes down to having some deep conversations and really, really understanding what is driving someone's behavior. And the surface thing is typically not what's going on.
That's a very interesting point, because it takes a lot of time to do that, right? And I think a lot of time change management focuses on broader communications and, ways to construct different, messages. But that one-on-one is really the best way to move those critical people. So I appreciate that feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question, Christine. It's so nice to talk to you.
Christine. And yeah, I just echo that one person, so that time that you've invested to have that one-to-one safe, deeper conversation to get to the root cause of the resistance pays off. As you said, Lisa, they then encourage others who might be in the same camp. So it has that halo effect or domino effect, whatever you want to call, in terms of encouraging others. So I always talk about the 3 C's. So root cause usually is around confidence, capability, or capacity, and it could be a combination of all 3. So fantastic. And thank you, Christine, for going first. Right. I'm just going to double check, because we've had Aditi ask some amazing questions in the chat. Aditi, are you able to come on camera before I come to Sophie? Or did you want me to read them out? I'm not sure whether you're traveling.
Yeah. Hi, Emma, and hi, Lisa.
Hi, Aditi.
Hi.
Very, very glad to be here. So I just have like maybe 2 questions, but first I will come to the first one. That have you tailored your HR policies in recent times? Just keeping in mind this Generation X, the recent times of quite quitting. People don't want to work, but they are not telling their bosses beforehand. Many demands of work from home or increased flexibility, but not paying back to the organization. So how have you tailored your HR policies considering the needs of a new generation in mind?
So I would say the main thing that we've done is actually offered flexibility at the individual hiring manager level to decide what type of work setup they want. If it's hybrid, if it's 5 days in the office, what makes sense for the individual team themselves and how they operate. And I think that's been a good move, instead of doing like a cookie cutter policy across a global company, because what it's done is it's allowed individual teams to kind of create the situation that works best for them. And as long as we're delivering on outcomes, the how we get to those outcomes is less important. So I would say we haven't put a policy in place, maybe, as the policy to the answer to your first question.
Okay. And the second question is a follow-up question of what you said, that how you have kept generating ideas and you don't stifle them. And but then do you also cascade? How do you cascade those ideas coming to you or to team managers, to the senior management, so that people can pay attention towards them?
So I'm very big on systems thinking and building business systems. And what I mean by that is whatever your meeting structures are, your one-on-one conversations, other communication methods, town halls, team meetings, whatever the case is, it is built in a system to where each one of those individual items is like a mechanical gear, and they are turning each other the way they are intentionally supposed to deliver on whatever the outcome is that we're strategically trying to accomplish. And so within those systems, that is where the surfacing of ideas comes up. So like we kind of categorize it as like ideas, problems, issues, and concerns as one example. That's what one team, has kind of coined as a segment in their meeting. But we bring those ideas in and we actually surface them through a centralized platform. And then I work really, really closely with our head of venture capital, our chief technology officer, and our head of strategy and advanced analytics to look at these ideas as they kind of come up centrally and then understand business impact. And then we make selections on which ones we will pursue. And we establish individual core project teams with cross-functional expertise so that we're also getting as much exposure to as many employees as possible on the projects that we're pursuing. And the ones that we don't pursue, we take the time to sit down with the person with that idea and explain the why, and then kind of where it's sitting in the backlog and when we might tackle it or go try it. So we kind of do it in a bit of a centralized and organized way. And then right right now we also have something we call a Groundbreakers Award. So we issue a huge award that gets showcased globally across the company for really innovative ideas. We're talking right now about some other ways to shift that to like a Shark Tank kind of concept where we do it globally in front of the company, but we haven't figured out exactly what we're going to do yet.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Aditi.
Nice
Thank
to
you
meet
so
you, Aditi.
much. Reward recognition again with humor. I love that. Okay, Sophie, thank you so much for your patience. Sophie, I'm going to come to you. Introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Hello, Emma. Hello, Lisa. Many thanks for this very interesting overview of what you do. So I'm Sophie. I'm part of Sanofi, like Christine, and I'm in charge of change management around the digital transformation. So very interesting to hear everything you do. Congrats, very complete. I would like to come back a bit on something you mentioned, which is how to handle the desire to change, especially in a large scale transformation with certainly intercultural aspects. How do you make sure that people on the long run stay interested in the change and also are recognized for being early adopters? Because you mentioned spending time with slow adopters, but the bulk of your efforts certainly are on early adopters or the majority of your employees. So I'm really interested in knowing how you keep up the flame. Thank you so much.
How I keep up the flame. Thank you for that question, Sophie. Well, one of the things that we do here, and it's one of our traits, is we fail fast. And this connects a little bit to the concept of really focusing on agile practices. So if we have an idea, we move very quickly to a scientific method, a very scientific approach for experimentation, and we test as fast as we can, and we try to break as fast as we can, because if we can fail fast, we learn quickly, and we're either iterating on the good idea, oh, we have just proven that wasn't such a great idea. After all, let's put that to the side and move to the next thing. But when you're testing and failing fast, we're putting small cross-functional teams on each one of these ideas. And very quickly, you're getting rapid exposure to a lot of teams testing in parallel that have people from my group actually kind of coaching them on the scientific method and how to run the experiments. And they learn very, very quickly from that process, and they start to talk to each other. You know, there's the water cooler talk, the rumor mill, the gossip, whatever. This is good gossip now. It's positive gossip, which is exactly what you want.
Absolutely.
And people end up having fun in the experimentation, and they get way less focused on the failure because they start seeing that failure is rewarded. We are very, very big here on being a learning organization. So like when we're looking at KPIs, right, red is not bad. Red is an opportunity to learn, because the faster I see a problem, the faster I can solve a problem, and the faster I can make things better. And so it's through that rapid exposure and the failing fast that we're really bringing as many people along as quickly as possible.
Wonderful, many thanks. Just if I may ask you, how do you bring those experimentation to the leadership? Because sometimes when people fail, they're not so happy about it. In some culture, it's not good to fail. And how do you make sure that those who try and who fail are still recognized by their management for at least taking a try?
That's a personal role I really play here in the organization. So, you know, I'm very tied to all of the experimentation that's happening and what we're failing on. And I do a lot of work in coaching with senior leaders behind the scenes, where I help them understand the details of the experiment and what the failure happened, and even the personalities or the people that are involved on the team. And in advance, I prepped them. Okay, you're going to get this presentation. Here's what you're going to hear, right? Think about reacting this way, right? Call out this is a very positive thing that we learned from it. And so what I find is after a couple of iterations with leaders doing that, they're just adopting and learning that practice, and they're showing up to the table a little bit differently. So we're also advancing and shifting culture from a leadership perspective that way.
Wonderful. Many thanks, Lisa. Super interesting.
Thank you, Sophie. So nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. Great questions. Oh, and do you know what? I'm a learning person through and through. So all the things that you've been describing about how that sort of learning organization is at the true heart of what you do, how you're shifting the perception of failure as being that learning opportunity. Red is not bad.
Right.
You know, it's better that we know. If we don't know, then it becomes a bigger issue. So yeah, that really speaks to me. Thank you, Lisa. So I'm going to come to Kerry. Hi, Kerry. Lovely to see
Hi
you.
there. Hi there. Hi, Lisa. So yeah, I'm Kerry. I'm head of people and organisation for one of Anglo American's business units, located in the UK. So I'm really interested in the way that you talked about the flexibility and empowerment of leaders to determine the ways of working, because I think that's fantastic. And it sounds like, in totality, you've got a great culture going on in the business. I guess I'm interested in, is there any conflict between teams where managers do things differently and where team members go, well, he's doing it that way and I'm allowed to work from home more, and this person's, not letting me and telling me I have to be in the office, and does that lead into performance management? And by the way, I hate the phrase performance management. So I'm really interested in, do you do that differently as well, in a way that comes across as much less bureaucratic and more empowering?
I am living through this situation personally right now as a leader. So when we sort of released at the beginning of the year for different managers to make decisions for themselves. And I thought, let's do a hybrid model, 3 days a week in the office. We did one day that was the same day everybody's in, and then the other 2 days people could pick. And the idea behind that was that people would prioritize their in-person working time for collaboration or learning or teaching each other and connecting. Well, my team saw other people not working in the office at all, and that started to create some angst and some discussions around it. So I said, I hear you. Let's run an experiment. They designed exactly how they want to work, which we kicked off 2 weeks ago, and they are running a controlled scientific data-driven experiment right now. That is time boxed for the next 2 months. And at 2 months, they will share the results as well as the performance of our department, because we always come up with like a balanced scorecard. We don't want to sacrifice one thing for another thing. And at the end of October, they'll report out on their results, and that will lead us to the decision of our working policy for our team. So I really encourage people, we want to do this differently. Let's try it differently. I'll try anything, but we're going to run a scientific and a controlled experiment and use data to make our decisions. And I think when you start to do that, it removes some subjectivity from it. And then the people designed the experiment, designed how they want to work, and proved that it was a good idea. And then you go, great job. This is how we're working. And you've empowered your people to design and think for themselves versus focusing externally on what other people are doing and what is or isn't fair or equitable.
Yeah, no, that's great. And also I love the approach to data. So getting them involved in creating the data rather than as just pulling data and putting it in front of them. So yeah, thanks. I really like that.
Absolutely. Thanks, Carrie.
Okay. Any further questions from our wonderful community or from the WeQual team for Lisa? This is your time. And thank you for the questions so far. And anything that resonates,
keep them coming.
They're great questions, yeah. Sophie.
I'm sorry, Lisa. Back with a third question, and then I will leave you.
You've not apologized.
No, I'm just wondering, since you have those experimentation, are you always working with the same groups of people, or do you have a network of some sort of change agents and you make them work with experts? Oh, for each topic, do you find a new network or new people? And do you have like various profiles, or are you working mostly with managers? How do you decide, or is it each time from a blank space that you start with? Thank you.
So we have an in-house operational excellence team that sits under my umbrella. And that group has 3 technical arms. They have organizational change management, They have a group of like Lean Six Sigma process engineers, and then the enterprise project management office. So we have project managers and coordinators that, you know, oversee the execution of the work. And so the Lean Six Sigma process engineers are the ones that are specialized in scientific experimentation. So we've got a handful of them. And so depending on capacity, it's kind of almost a first in, first out situation. Anybody in the company anywhere can bring an idea, and where we have capacity, we basically partner up a coach, one of our Lean Six Sigma coaches, side by side with whoever has the idea. The concept being that, you know, it's like you see one, you do one, you teach one, you know, so we work side by side so people can see us set the experiment up and how to run it, and provide that side by side coaching, so that the next time they're doing it on their own with like a 50% touch from us. And then the next time they're completely doing it by themselves, because we're developing that culture of problem solving and innovation across every employee at all levels of the organization.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Sophie. So I've got a question, and then we'll come to Cameron. So I'm curious, how do you keep up to date? Because the thing with technology is it's changing constantly. You've used some examples, obviously, some brilliant examples of how you're, you know, getting the buy-in, getting peer learning going. I mean, there's so many wonderful examples that you've used, but how do you know which one is the best, and how do you keep up to date as an organization?
Oh gosh, I don't know that we're at a point right now to figure out which one's the best, because it's changing so fast. So what I really try to focus on is doing things that we can in existing platforms. You know, what we've done with our Chat GPT and the new enclosed version is pretty substantial. And so, you know, honestly, just writing GPTs that do things for different people in the company, like that's such an easy one that doesn't take a huge lift. And I mean, it's a little funny. My husband might be the most technology resistant person you've ever met. I mean, I've already taught him, he's how to design tattoos with GPT, and he's like in there doing graphic design and all sorts of stuff now. But you know, so all that to be said, right? Keep it simple. Don't try to keep up with everything under the sun. Just do some little things and get good with it. And then use GPT to tell you all the changes in technology in the last 2 weeks, and then go read about it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Lisa. Cameron, are you happy to ask your question to Lisa? Okay, no problem. So I'm going to read it out. So Cameron has asked, do you find it more important that change is incorporated from grassroots level or from top down? And he said, I find it useful to do both and do a kind of pincer movement. So what's your view on that, Lisa?
I would agree. I think you have to do it from both sides, and there's some meeting in the middle, because a lot of times your grassroots efforts aren't necessarily going to be as strategically aligned and connected to get you that biggest impact as you might like. And that's just because the people at that grassroots level may not have all of the information. But you start getting grassroots ideas, and then from the top, you're understanding what you're trying to do strategically, and you can start, right, triangulating data points and connecting dots. And then sure enough, right, you have that change evolving between that top and bottom combination where you sort of meet in the middle. I don't think you can do one or the other, or you end up working on the wrong things or wasting resources.
Amazing. Right. Any further questions? Come on, community. There's quite a few of you, and I can see. Thank you, Ilya.
Now you can hear me. So can you hear me?
Oh, hello, Ilya.
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, Lisa. I'm from Coca-Cola Hellenic from Switzerland in the supply chain role, supply chain director for the country. Thank you very much for the session. Digital transformation is something that it's very hot for every industry and every company, and we are proceeding very fast. And you mentioned that sometimes we need to select how fast we will go and pick the ones which will have the best return on investment. My personal challenge, not personal, but also organizational challenge, is that digitalization requires reskilling, means training needs time. So the question is, are you stopping things that you were doing in order to enable people to really have the time, not only to learn how to use the tools, but actually to use the tools so that they can really learn them. Because for me, that's the struggle that we currently have. We implement and deploy so many things. Many things are happening. Technology is advancing, but we really do not have the time to learn.
Mhm.
So organizations need to prioritize and maybe give this time to the employees to really focus and learn. How do you do
Yeah.
it?
So I think that's, I mean, we're in that position where, I'm sure everybody is in the world. You're working at like 120% capacity, probably most days, maybe more. So that's why we've really prioritized the bite-sized learning, where somebody can go watch a 2.5-minute video, learn one small thing, and then apply it. Because what we're finding is that one small thing, once applied, is saving 2 to 3 times in that productivity. And now I can take that 2 to 3 times time savings and I can redeploy that to a little bit more learning. So it's, it's almost like a positive snowball effect, if that makes sense. But I think it's really, really easy to let training become an artificial barrier. And for people to go, we need to sit in a 2-hour class, or we need to spend 3 months building this training curriculum. But this is where the agile piece is so important, in my opinion, is you've got to figure out, what do I need to know to get me through the next 4 weeks? And then I'll figure out the next thing, right? And then I'm just incrementally sprinting along the way and gaining knowledge. And that knowledge gain is turning into an efficiency gain that can then be catapulted into more growth and development. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ilya. Pascal, hello.
Hello, Emma. Hello, Lisa. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm Pascal Thor. I'm the Global Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Head for Heineken. I'm calling today from Amsterdam and really enjoying your, let's say, infectious energy. And there's a comment on the energy in the chat. So yeah, I really found that we were thinking alike with Patricia, who put that comment in. My question is about DEI, and on DEI, DIB, as you mentioned, B as belonging, there's a plenty of so-called best practices. And I would be very interested in understanding what for you was the bigger success, really the best practice in terms of deploying an initiative or transformation on DIB. And so there's 2 questions in one. What was the one you really thought would be successful and failed the most miserably, and what did you learn from it?
Okay. So I'll start with the first question. And what I think has worked best for us is making DEEB not an HR initiative. And so one of the things that we did, this was actually early 2022, is we created a formal sponsorship program between male leaders, and it's men because they're traditional. I mean, you see that heavily in the real estate industry. And so we selected a group, and we selected a group / they volunteered. They were not voluntold, about 15 senior male leaders in the company. And we paired them with a woman or person of color for a formal sponsorship program that lasted for about 12 months. Wow. And what it did is, it wasn't just about the sponsorship and like helping, a diverse person get a seat at the table. It was through that one-on-one sponsorship and relationship that we created a deeper sense of empathy in our male leaders that were sponsors. And they started to really understand some of the things, right, that various diverse people are up against. And then now they're telling their buddy over drinks, and he's telling his buddy over drinks, and you end up with this informal network of spread of good information as a result of it. So that was a really big success that we had. A big failure that we had, I would say, we tried to do like a mass training on unconscious bias and gender discrimination as an example. And I personally just find that bringing people in a room and telling them all the things that they're doing wrong or should be better at doesn't truly create like collaboration and empathy and meaningful connections. So I think that was a pretty big failure. It was just trying to do like a mass training and help people understand things in the world, because it didn't land like that. It didn't create some empathy and understanding. In some cases, I think it actually created a little bit more animosity.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Thanks a lot, Lisa.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
It does. And thank you, Pascal. Patricia, I think we'd all love to know the answer to your question. So Pascal's commented on it too, but I'd love you to ask Lisa directly.
Okay.
Thank you so
Hello,
much.
Emma. Hello, Emma. Hello, Lisa. Thank you so much for this great sharing. So my question is on the energy. So I have worked on the transformation in the past, and it requires a lot of energy. There's up and down, for us as leaders, but also for our teams. So what are your tips?
Well, what are my tips?
For keeping your energy and the
to keep
energy
your
of your
energy
team,
so
because
high
your
and
energy is
you know,
amazing. Yeah.
to jump from transformation to others.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I try to live from a place of always assuming positive intent, and anything that's happening around me coming from a place of positivity. And I know that as a leader, I'm responsible for modeling behavior, right? And bringing people along. And if people see me being negative or resistant or questioning something, right, it's very much sending a message that that's okay and it's the right thing to do. Maybe I have some questions in my head. I'm a human being, right? We're all skeptical of things, but I always make sure when I show up in front of my team, I'm positive, I'm energetic, I'm excited. I'm always looking for the glass half full option. And when we get to the glass half empty options, I go, you know what? You're absolutely right. And this other thing over there. So I always try to go and shift positive. I think that people that want to be around that will be around that, and people that don't will find their way out. And sometimes it's also okay if some people find their way out. That's okay too.
Great sharing. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Good practice. I should try more like you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patricia. So Eve I can't believe this, is dialing in from Australia. So Eve, you're absolutely allowed to be in your PJs. And yes, of course, I will read out your question because it is super late. So thank you for your question. So Lisa, Eve asks, do you set innovation or idea targets or measurements for individuals or teams? And how do you reward people who contribute to initiatives in addition to their day-to-day job?
Yes, so we actually have a corporate goal that is tied to compensation for each one of our business segments, the way we structure it, to conduct at least 2 data-driven pilots in a single calendar year. And it's very intentional the way that is worded. It is not come up with 2 ideas, because we did that the year before and we ended up with a pipeline of like hundreds of ideas that never went into experimentation. So that was a big shift we made coming into this year. And you'll notice that it isn't have 2 successful pilots. It is simply execute 2 data-driven pilots. Because what we're trying to do is shift behavior and mindset and teach people to have an idea and test it and fail fast quickly, and that's okay. And the more you test, whether you fail or succeed, the more you are recognized and rewarded from a performance perspective, right? And it's very much looked at kind of leading the pack. And then I think, as I was mentioning earlier, we do something called a Groundbreakers Award. So we have a committee that includes the president of our company, and we look at submissions, and they have to be, ROI, value, impact, all of those types of things. And, we had a Groundbreakers Award late last year, and they got to go on this really nice vacation to the Turks and Caicos and do cool, and do something cool with like their entire family. So, we try to give really cool, big awards to people when they do things like this, in addition to your typical compensation, right, tied to performance management.
Yeah, incredible. I'm going to come back to something that you said earlier, and that was about sort of showcasing the work that you're doing around digital transformation to attract talent into the business that you wouldn't have ordinarily attracted to the sector, right?
Mhm.
So and it's a balance, isn't it, for organizations that are striving for growth. You absolutely want to retain, develop and progress the existing talent, but you also need to bring in new talent. So I wondered if you could expand on that a little bit more in terms of that attraction piece as well.
It's something we have added into our standard recruitment and interview process. Actually, we did work on this late last year with our human resources team and talent acquisition to actually start to create some standard protocols for interview questions and discussions that we use for candidates coming into the company. We also have structured talking points around what we're looking for from personality, styles. To be successful here, you have to be a really curious person. To be successful here, you have to be willing to test and fail. To be a successful person here, you have to be willing to disagree and commit. These are the types of things that we look for, and we're very, very communicative about it to people that we're bringing in from the organization. So much so, I don't want to say we scare people off, but we're very candid about it and like exactly what it takes to be successful here, because we don't want people to make the wrong decision coming in.
Of course. So I am going to just pause there because I'm conscious that many of our wonderful audience will have something to go to. And so at 5:02, we just take a quick pause. Feedback is so vital to what we do. We are driven by you, our members, and the wider business community in terms of what we cover. So my colleague Joy is going to put up a short poll. Please, before you leave the session, complete that poll. You will also receive a follow-up email to give us more feedback. We're also summarizing all of the fantastic insights and takeaways that Lisa has shared today. They're in the chat, which you can see just now, so you can copy and paste those, or we'll put those into the email. And do follow us on LinkedIn, because we will be doing some post-event follow-up with Lisa in the coming days. But there are the top tips for you. So 10 of the top takeaways that we've collated from today's session and from Lisa. So any further questions? I can see lots of thank yous, Lisa, which is always incredible. So
thank you, everybody.
In case you can't see the chat, thanks a lot. This was a great session, so inspiring, excellent session. Thank you, Lisa, very inspirational, and lots of inspirational and wonderful, which I absolutely concur with. So thank you so much for your time, Lisa. Any final words from you, unless we have any questions from our fantastic audience?
I just want to thank everybody for joining today, and thank those of you for asking your questions, and just giving me an opportunity to talk to you for almost an hour. It's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool thing for me to do to start my day. I absolutely love WeQual. I love this organization. It's been a huge supporter of mine, and anybody on here, right? Like I love supporting and helping and empowering and doing anything I can for anybody. Do not hesitate to reach out to me on LinkedIn. You got a question, you want to connect, any of that kind of stuff. I'm an open book, and I'm here to help wherever I can.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It's been terrific. I think you and I are kindred spirits. Certainly. From a learning perspective, from a transformation, I love your approach to iterative learning, trying and failing fast, learning from it. That really, I just think that's fantastic. And it's just the best way of working when things are changing so rapidly around us. Investing that time for those deep and meaningful conversations with those that are really struggling with change, and then hoping obviously that they will pay it forward in terms of others within the organization. So many insights. I have got time for one final question. Does anyone want to go for it with Lisa while we've still got a few minutes remaining? Oh. No.
I'll go.
Oh.
Dominique. Well,
who is I'll go.
Oh, Dominique. This is Dominique.
Hi, Dominique. Yes,
hi.
Fantastic.
Hi, good
Please.
morning. Dominique from IBM.
Good morning.
So, Lisa, what is your favorite thing to do outside of work?
Oh, I love it.
Oh, my favorite thing to do? Well, play with my dogs, because I'm a huge dog person. But I also I do like competitive bodybuilding and stuff. So like I'm really big into like athletic things. So I really love like health and nutrition instead. Like I actually like coach some people in the company for fun and like help them with their diets and stuff. So yeah, that's what I do for fun. I'm probably a pretty big nerd saying that. That's
I
what
love
I do
it.
for fun.
I love it. That's great.
Thank you for your
Thanks, Lisa.
question as well, Dominique, and welcome to WeQual as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Right. Final reminder before we wrap up for today. Karen, give us a wave. Karen, my colleague, is going to stay on after the session. So if you're a member or you're new to WeQual and you've got any questions, any further support, want to know how we can support you, please stay on. Karen will be here, and our door is always open anyway to support you. Lisa, you've been incredible. Thank you so much for your support from the beginning, right? 2019,
Yeah,
from the beginning.
yes.
And to have you come back and do this session today and all of your continued support is incredible. So thank you again. And everyone, thank you for giving up the time, your valuable time to come on today. Please look out for our follow-up email. The key takeaways are there, and follow us on LinkedIn. Have a wonderful rest of your day and see you at our next event, if you'll remember, this Thursday with Mark Bateman on how executives lead strategically. Have a wonderful day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Lisa.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.